Okay, so welcome everyone to this month's 0 .1 session. Really excited for the topic as well as the speakers this evening. We're really going to be talking and diving pretty deeply into student life, student athlete life, and especially going down south to the US to potentially pursue some educational and athletic careers. So we're going to be talking to a couple of great speakers today. But for those who have not come to one of these before, really these sessions are designed, they're on different topics, and they're designed to really educate the athletes and the coaches from around the province on different elements of high performance sport, as well as some grassroots things as well. So we're really just trying to give everyone an opportunity to listen to some really great speakers. We usually have at least one athlete and then a sort of an expert in the field as well. We've had topics around training methods, sports psychology, lots of different areas. So without going too much into that, we'll get started. I'll introduce our first speaker. Hopefully you all have heard the name and maybe you haven't even seen the face, but Brandon will be joining us tonight. Brandon is our current national record holder for the 800 meters, four-time national champion. Is that right, Brandon?
Yes. I think 4 or 5, but it doesn't matter. 5, 4.
After 3, you lose count.
Yes.
Two-time Olympian, and more importantly, triple gold medalist at the 2013 Canada Games.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So being a Canada Games year, hopefully people will get some inspiration from that. And in 2014, I think it was, you went down to Mississippi State. Is that, if I got that year correct?
I went down 2012.
Okay, 2 years before that.
Yes.
So Brandon's going to be speaking tonight about his experience, but also he's got a current role with Streamline Athletes. And if you haven't seen anything on Streamline, they're a Canada-based company that are really trying to help people do what we're talking about tonight, which is get people down to the US to get opportunities to different schools down there. So he'll be talking a little bit about his role with that. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Brandon, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you for having me. So yeah, my name is Brandon McBride. I do a little bit of running. I went down to Mississippi State University, and I'm here to talk to you all about the NCAA. So I guess first things first, the question I get asked a lot is, why the NCAA? Why should Canadian athletes attend the NCAA or go to an NCAA school? And my first thought is really the resources. You get free schooling, elite level competitions, you get access to opportunities, whether that be post-secondary or post-collegiate or post-bachelor education, jobs, the list goes on. Another question I get a lot is, how do I get in contact with these NCAA schools? And for majority of Canadian athletes, they'll need to reach out to their desired school, fill out applications, send your results to coaches, research standards, whether they be academic and athletic, is also very, very important. In terms of the overall recruitment journey, finding a home for the next 3 to 5 years can be very, very stressful. Talk to anybody that has gone through the process, they'll tell you it's very stressful. Majority of high performance athletes can expect to be approached by multiple schools. It's important to do your research when considering a school. Selecting a school can be extremely stressful, as I mentioned before, especially with all the factors involved. Factors like finding the right coach, the location, the academic programs available, and just researching the athletic program. With myself, having gone through the journey at a young age, I highly recommend that a lot of athletes have a parent, guardian, or trustworthy adult heavily involved in the process. I know just speaking to, a lot of individuals having gone through the process, people tend to say, oh, the 18-year-old athlete is capable of making this decision. But I really do think that it is an enormous decision. And I mean, having someone that's older, more mature, to be able to help the minor through that process is so important. I say all of this because I just review, I reflect on my experience and my peers' experiences. And if my parents weren't as involved as they were, or my mentor wasn't as involved, I mean, I may not be sitting here with my academic and athletic accomplishments that I currently have. I know individuals that were far more talented and gifted than I was, whose parents did not believe that they should be involved. And unfortunately, that athlete ended up in the wrong situation. I know athletes that have ended up in the wrong situation multiple times, having transferred and just taking advice from individuals that didn't necessarily have their best interests at heart. And these individuals are no longer in the sport. And they, after all the years and times bumping their head, they didn't obtain a degree that set them up for future success. So when deciding whether to attend the NCAA, an athlete and their inner circle should weigh the pros and cons. A lot of the positives, like I said before, the resources, the free, low cost education. It's very highly competitive. And, the athlete's going to receive a lot of life experience, living on your own, having to care for yourself. A lot of individuals are going to be facing challenges that they haven't quite had to face before. You talk about making sure that you are eating 3 square meals a day, making sure that you're getting in your veggies, your fruits, so on and so forth. I mean, a lot of us were used to having our parents at the time having to deal with all that and set that up for us. And a lot of, I guess, a lot of the cons or negatives or just really important considerations is that it's going to be highly competitive as well. I think that's important to consider. There's going to be just being put in a highly competitive environment. It's going to come with a lot of stress, and athletes don't really realize how stressful it can be until you're put in a situation where you have to perform at a high level week in and week out. A lot of just think of the various provincial competitions that you may go to. Look at OFSA. Just imagine having to do OFSA every week for 4 months, 5 months in a row. That's the type of competition that you're going to face in the NCAA. And so another important consideration is really if the athlete's capable of prioritizing school and track, right? I won't sit here and act like it is easy. If you're looking for balance, in terms of having a social life, having a bunch of extracurricular activities and going out and having a good time, the NCAA may not be for you if you want to be successful. I'll tell you right now, 80% of your time, if you're doing it correctly, 80 to 90% of your time is going to be spent either studying or competing, training, rehabbing, prehabbing, all these different things. And it is very time consuming. I remember there were a lot of days when I was a freshman and sophomore that I would leave my dorm or apartment at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't get back until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, just because I go to class and then I go to eat, go back to class, and then I would head over to practice. And then they usually had us on a rehab or prehab program right before practice. We'd do that for an hour, and then we had to practice for about 2-3 hours, and then we're refueling, doing stretching, and then we had study hall right after, and then we walk home, and we'd get home at like 8, 9 o'clock at night. And then normally we were just too tired to do anything else. We go to bed and wake up and do it all over again. So it's important to understand what you're signing up for. And also another important consideration is scholarship type. I won't sit here and act like financials isn't a major part of, your consideration on what school to go to, but you should definitely know, what scholarships are available and the costs associated with simply going or attending that school. Another important consideration is location. Each state is very, very different. My experience having gone to Mississippi State University was very, very interesting. It was a culture shock. And it was very, very different than a lot of my peers' experiences out west or out east or in the north. So yeah, like I've said, I'll talk a little bit about my journey at Mississippi State University. I had a great experience. There were a lot of barriers. The largest barriers were socially and culturally. It was a huge social and cultural shock. I was well prepared academically and athletically. We have a very good academic system here in Ontario, a good education system and whatnot. But I really, really struggled socially. And yeah, I'll get into that another time. But I guess the rationale behind my choice to attend at Mississippi State University, or my inner circles choice, was just really the coach, the atmosphere. Whether we're talking about the team or the NCAA in general, because it was very competitive. But also a lot of it had to do with the funding. Not just scholarship money, but the money that the school invested in their student athletes. We had our own facilities, our own trainers. We received 10 to 15 pairs of shoes a year. We just had, it seemed like, unlimited resources. Also, the connections that I made at Mississippi State were lifelong connections, lots of friends, lots of mentors. These individuals still help me with my day-to-day stuff. I know I can reach out to a lot of these individuals on a daily basis, and then they're only one text message away, and I really do value that relationship. My transition from secondary schooling to university was very tough. I'm very grateful that I had my parents, like I said before. My mentor was able to shed light on the NCAA, and if I didn't have him, I don't think I would have made the proper decision. And what he brought to the table was information. He knew exactly what to look for in a coach, what to look for in a program, and yeah, that was the difference between myself and a lot of my peers. And really, that's where Streamline Athletes come into play or come into the picture. So I don't know if a lot of you know anything about Streamline Athletes. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I don't want to bore anybody. But yes, so I am the partnerships coordinator for Streamline. I help with their ambassador program, and I help with the various partnerships with the PSOs and whatnot. But Streamline Athletes was basically founded in 2017. For those of you who don't know, Streamline Athletes is a data-driven online sports recruiting platform that helps streamline the recruiting process for both university athletes, for both student athletes and college and university teams, excuse me. And what does that mean? Basically, it means Streamline strives to make the university and recruitment selection journey just easier for all parties involved. Our mission is to reveal opportunities and provide information so that athletes can move forward as confident and inspired individuals. We basically want to remove a lot of the barriers that athletes encounter along this journey. Our business model purposely focuses on the athlete's experience because we aim to just help as many athletes as possible. That's why we have a free-to-use platform. So we offer a free-to-use platform because this allows us to the opportunity to reach as many athletes as possible. I myself, having gone through and seeing other people go through the same process, it's, you look at the other recruiting platforms and I mean, the fees can be outrageous. That's one of the reasons why I resonate so well with Streamline is because at the end of the day, it's about the athlete's experience. So I don't believe in athletes paying absorbent amounts of money for this information and for the help that we provide. So what makes us unique is we have a two-sided market. Our B2B side, our business to business side, is what helps us provide our services at a low cost or little to no cost for our athletes. So basically, we pass along a lot of the fees to the universities that sign up for our program. And so with all that being said, I hope that I see a few of the athletes sign up and enjoy some of our resources and some of the help that we can offer. I will forward Brendan over our website, and he can forward it over to everybody on the call. But for the individuals listening, it's just streamlineathletes.com. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed.
Thanks so much, Brandon. I have actually just posted the website into the chat there. So if you wanted to have a look straight away, that's the website. And I think, as you said, Brandon, a lot of the things are on there resource-wise are pretty self-explanatory. I wanted to dive into a couple of topics about you personally. But before we do that, just whilst we're on Streamline, you mentioned that, you're, I guess, competitors, for want of a better word, they do charge a lot and that sort of thing. But, with the do you feel like that your service is kind of curated for the Canadian market? Do you feel like it serves Canadians really well? And, why would they not go to somewhere else,
Yes, I really do think that that we definitely do a good job curating specifically for Canadians, because I mean, one of the things, like, our team is filled with just Canadian athletes, and I know what it's like to be a young Canadian athlete. And I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know growing up, being a part of track and field, I didn't have thousands and thousands of dollars to go ahead and spend on a lot of these recruiting platforms and whatnot. And so that's one of the largest reasons why I joined the Streamline team, because I see the value in it. I see how it can help a lot of the Canadian athletes. And that's really the difference between us and, like, the US market. I mean, the US market, they're used to paying ridiculous fees for everything. I mean, everything costs. Coaching costs, programs, in order to get your programs written by a coach, it costs. If you want the coach to just if you want just a conversation with the coach, it costs. Whereas our market, you pay a one-time fee of, let's say, or a yearly fee of $500, $600, $700. A lot of the times in the US, athletes are paying that like every 3 weeks for a coach. And it's just, I just think I don't agree with that. And I think that the reason that the US can get away with that is because they have the population is so high. They have so many athletes that they can just discard. Whereas Canada, we have to be more methodical. We truly have to care for the all around individual. And I think it really shows on the various levels, because we simply just don't have as many talented individuals, because our population size is a lot smaller. So we have to really be creative, and we have to really be caring to our talent that we do have in our small little country. We're small, but we're powerful still.
Absolutely. No, that's great, and I really appreciate the ethos that you guys have there. I think it's wonderful. This service is available at a really good rate. As I mentioned before, and as I said in the chat, if you've got any questions, you can raise your hand, or if you want to just throw them straight into the chat, that's fine. I've got a few things that I wanted to cover with you, Brandon. Back to kind of where you started with, I guess, selecting your school and that process of trying to decide which schools can be best for you. you mentioned them kind of briefly, but I wouldn't mind if you dived a little bit more into sort of what the really highly important elements of finding a good school are. Like, what are the sort of the checkpoints, and maybe even in preferential order, is because you mentioned your coach, and that was a really big thing for you. Obviously, the environment within the school, but yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about that sort of decision making process.
Right. So for me, really, I guess the coach would be, because after a certain level, once you get past a certain threshold, the academics are sound wherever you go. So if you're talking about Division One schools, top 50 schools, they're going to have great academic programs. Your education is basically what you make it. And so I remember just being at Mississippi State, and the levels of education. I know I'm getting a little bit off track, but the levels of education or the quality of education varied because it just came down to the amount that the athlete was willing to put in. But so for me, I would have to start with the coach, because just growing up, my first couple of years of track and field, I mean, we were training on a dirt track, but we had a great coach, and he was very dedicated. We had a dedicated group, and I mean, we still had individuals that were performing at a high level. We had, just in my high school group alone, we had several individuals that ran 47 seconds and in the 400, and we are training on a dirt track. We didn't touch spikes until we actually competed, or maybe a couple of days prior to competition. We do a couple of strides and we were ready to go. So I would definitely say the coach, because at the end of the day, the coach is the leader. He's the one that's instilling the values into the group and whatnot. And then secondary, I would say the scholarship amount, the athletic program in general, the academic programs. Thirdly, it comes down to the location. I think the location, it can play a role. I mean, being a minority and having gone down to the South, it was very, very tough. I did a talk with CBC about a lot of the things that I experienced down South, and it was something else, I tell you that. But being on campus and being within Mississippi State athletics, it was an amazing experience. Yeah, I would definitely say those three are most important to me.
And then on the opposite end, what are kind of some red flags? Because I would imagine, I get this amazing opportunity to go to Oregon, and like all I see is just these, this like a gold in my eyes. I'm really excited. And what are the things that you should look maybe a bit deeper into that would be red flags and things that you would go, okay, what really is going on here, or maybe I should reconsider?
Right. So for me, and I didn't quite see this, my parents saw this initially, but it took me getting a little older. When you go on a visit, the athlete wants to talk to the cream of the crop athletes. The young athlete or the recruit, he wants to talk to the superstar and ask their experience. And of course, everything's all, it's great. Everything's all flowers and daisies and everything for the superstar, because they get treated like gold because they're producing and everything. But for me, I like to talk to the individuals in the training room that haven't competed in the last, let's say, 6 months. Let's hear their experience, or the individuals that are struggling. I want to know, why did this individual come out of school and they ran fast in high school, and now they're at this school and they're not able to run, or they're not running at the level that they were before? And so I like to look at a lot of the athletes that fall through the cracks. And if you're witnessing a lot of athletes fall through the cracks, and like, we can look at a program, and I'm not going to specify which program, but you can look at a lot of like the high level programs and whatnot. And I don't want to see how many NCAA champions that they're producing. I want to see, well, obviously that is important. But I also want to see how many kids are falling through the cracks as well. How many kids are graduating? How many, what's the percentage of individuals that come to their school and have a personal best? How many, what's their percentage, their graduation percentages? It's important to see the entire picture. And so if you, like some of these top end, high end schools, that sometimes they'll get, I mean, cream of the crop athletes. They can get like 50, 60 kids that are capable of winning NCAAs. Now, if they can only convert, five of those kids into NCAA champions, that's a red flag to me, whereas you can go to a medium level NCAA schools, and if they're only getting 3 or 4 NCAA champion type talent, but they have 3 NCAA champions, then that's a pretty good percentage, and so they're capable of using all the resources provided to them in an effective manner, and I saw that. I remember that I got teased that I decided to go to Mississippi State, because my peers, they were going to Oregon, they were going to Florida State, USC, and they're like, oh, here comes Brandon, little old Mississippi State. And, it's funny because it's not funny, actually. A lot of those individuals that ended up going to these high-end schools, they didn't end up having a great experience, because at the end of the day, when they got hurt and things weren't going as well, the school just discarded them. They honored some of them, they honored their scholarships, but they weren't getting attention from the coach. They weren't allowed to see the training staff. They just wanted those resources to be focused on the high-end athletes. And that's very, very important to know, because I remember at Mississippi State, when my first year was a disaster, and the head coach doubled down. He said, okay, we're giving you A type treatment. We need to take that to A+. You need to tell us what we need to do. If we need to go out and find a chiropractor, let's go out and find a chiropractor. If we got to get you special shoes, we got to send you to a specialized doctor to get your feet looked at, then that's what we'll do. And they doubled down. And I remember that there were several schools waiting for me to transfer. And the coach just said, hey, he apologized to my parents about my first year. And he said, we're trying to figure it out. And he asked my parents, just give me one more year. And the very next year, and everybody looked at me like I was crazy when I decided to go back to Mississippi State my second year. I ended up going undefeated and winning 2 NCAA titles, multiple big races and everything. And then all of a sudden, everyone has short-term memory. It's like, oh, Mississippi State's the greatest thing ever. And, but yeah. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, this is great. I love it, Brandon. And yeah, that's a wonderful story. And good on you for sticking it out, like with what you thought was what ended up being a great sort of environment for you. And on that, it sort of made me think about, those things that you would be looking at, potentially red flags, but you mentioned the resources and especially treatment. I mean, my experience working in both US and Canada is Canada has some of the best therapists in the world. And I imagine that knowing what the sports medical setup is, like what quality they have as far as their practitioners, as well as what their structure is probably quite important as well.
Yes. It is very, very important. I mean, even at the professional level right now, I'm still going through it, because I just transitioned to the US. And back home, I mean, you had world-class therapists everywhere. Every single city had someone that was world-class, that like one of the best. And I really took it for granted. And then you get down here, and then their therapists are solid, they're good, but it's not the same. It's not the same. And you're kind of scratching your head, and you're like, listen, this is not right. I don't know. This is more expensive, and the actual treatment isn't the greatest. But yeah, it's important to know all of this when transitioning to the NCAA system.
What are some of the misnomers, some of the things that you probably heard about before getting down to NCAA, and when you got there, you're like, oh, this is not right. This is very different to what I expected.
Um, I thought that the training was going to be a lot better. I thought that it was going to be structured a lot better. I thought, okay, so everybody thinks that just because the NCAA is producing so many athletes that the coaches are going to be just out of this world. And that's actually it's now there are good coaches, quality coaches, but I really do think that Canada is very, especially Ontario, we're as athletes, we're very, very spoiled because we have a lot of individuals who are very good at what they do and they care. So when I got to the NCAA, where you're seeing all these workouts and you're like, I'm thinking to myself like, wow. And a lot of individuals, it's what the difference is you just have more talented athletes and it's more competitive. And so you get after a while, you're going to these meets and your performance or your intensity is going to raise because the quality of athletes is just it's just higher. There's more athletes. Like I look at it when I got out of secondary school or high school. There was one or two athletes that were racing at the level that we were racing at, like a very, very high level. Whereas in the States, they had 25 of those athletes, and so you get into the NCAA and you're only used to butting heads with a high level athlete, once or twice a season, and now it's every week. And so what tends to happen is instead of, you thinking that you're going to get elite level coaching and it's going to be, oh, the coaches must be out of this world good. No, it's just that the NCAA is very, very competitive and it's going to raise the level of that you compete at.
Yeah, they're really good comments, and that's very interesting. We had a couple of questions in the chat. Michael Unger asked, how important is curriculum choice for student athletes? And do you have any experiences you can share?
At the end of the day, I think that you should pursue what you're passionate about. I heard a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of schools and coaches deterring athletes from pursuing things like engineering, mathematics, the sciences, because they want to focus on running. And I mean, they want the athlete to focus on running. And honestly, it comes down to, you can't run forever. You have a fixed small, time slot or time period where you're going to be at your peak. And at the end of the day, we don't know what's going to happen. You could have an amazing career and then step on a curb. And then all of a sudden you have, this injury that, unfortunately you can't compete anymore. And so my parents, I've always preached education first. And so I do think that sitting down with your parents and mapping out, or sitting down with a guidance counselor and mapping out a plan of what you're interested in, what sort of career paths that you see yourself pursuing, and then really making a decision based off that. I personally don't think a coach should be involved with your the curriculum choice or the major choice or whatnot. It should be completely separate.
That's excellent advice. Yeah, I haven't really thought about that, but it makes complete sense. Those majors that are just really high as far as workload and intensity and pressure. It makes complete sense. Okay, Joanne Lee has asked, is there different factors that older students and athletes should consider compared to someone who's straight out of high school?
I don't think so. The older student athlete, like we're talking like transfers, or we're talking post-collegiate athletes and whatnot. So if we're talking transfers, I don't think so. I think, you know, I will say this, for an athlete that has had, the older athletes tend to know their bodies more, or better than a lot of the younger athletes. And so what tends to happen is when you get into a program, there are various coaching styles. And so it's important to know your coach's coaching style, because a lot of coaches like to micromanage. A lot of coaches like, it's their way or the highway. And being an older athlete, you know what works for your body. Um, you know what to do, what not to do, and whatnot. And that may not always, you may not always be on the same page with that particular coach. And so knowing that, are going into a situation where if you're older transferring in, knowing, hey, that this coach is willing to work with me, that's very, very important. Whereas a young athlete that, say they're, they're very, very talented, and they don't have as many years of experience under their belt, so they don't know their body as well. They may just want to go with the flow. And yeah. Yeah, they may want to, they may just, they may need a coach to micromanage them, whereas the older athlete wants a little more leeway. A good example of that is my coach now. He does not like micromanaging. He worries about the bigger pieces, and he wants me to take care of all the smaller pieces. And he says, hey, look, if you follow this workout regime, we're going to get you to where you need to be, and you're going to be the one that has to put together the therapy piece. I can't tell you who to see, what chiros to see, what physios to see, because at the end of the day, you know what works for your body. And so it's the same sort of thing, but obviously on a smaller scale with a lot of the younger athletes, collegiate athletes.
Gaetano has asked us thoughts on U Sports.
I think it's, I think it's I think it can be, there's a lot of great athletes that have gone through U Sports. I think it's, for me, I've never really, because I'm so tall, I don't like indoors. So, because I'm a bigger body, and it's tough for me to get around those 200-meter tracks. But I do think that there are a lot of great athletes to go through U Sports. And it's very competitive as well. And it's very similar to the NCAA, just the team atmosphere. At the end of the day, that's one of the things I miss the most about my collegiate days, is just knowing that you're showing up to a meet and you're all on the same team, you're all focused on winning points. And there's really, I can honestly say there's no better feeling than being in that atmosphere, in that team environment. Whether it's the NCAA, whether it's U Sport, whether you're over in Europe, there's no better feeling. Not even on the professional circuit. I have not felt like me winning an NCAA title, indoors and outdoors. It was so much bigger than myself. I remember being in Eugene and crossing the finish line and getting off the track. And I'm looking at the training staff, I'm looking at the coaches, everybody's in tears. Everybody's like, they're celebrating, because it wasn't just a win for me, it was a win for the entire school. Seeing these individuals that they put in countless hours of work into myself, into my prehab program, helping me get through all the aches and pains, even, showing up to the meet when I was too nervous to race, and them talking me into racing and saying, hey, look, just being in there, being with me day in and day out. I mean, there's no better feeling than that team feeling, the team atmosphere.
I feel like it's a lovely point to finish up, unless there's any more questions that are coming through. But that's really, really insightful, Brandon. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and if people want to reach out, I assume that on Streamline Athletes, the website, they can contact you guys and ask any questions they might have, and especially if they've sort of thought over some of the things we've talked about tonight. But yeah, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, all the best for this year, and I hope things go really well down there in Eugene.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I hope you all enjoyed, and I definitely had a great time.
Thanks so much.
Alrighty.
Okay, next speaker we have Carmyn. So Carmyn James, we'll start with where she's at right now, because that's most important for this discussion. She's our NCAA performance advisor for Athletics for Athletics Canada. So it's a pretty new role for you, Carmyn, I know, but you've had a lot of experience coaching in general. I think you were coaching before I'd even gone over my first hurdle back in the 80s. But yeah, so I'm looking over my notes here. You started off and you've had coaching roles with UBC, I think was your first one. You were the team head coach for Athletics Canada for World Championships. You've been with U of T, and you had I'm not sure how long you were with Hawaii, but you were University of Hawaii as well before coming back to Canada and joining us. So thank you so much for joining us, Carmyn. I'm really excited to hear about your experiences. What do you?
Well, thanks, Brendan, and thanks a bunch for the invite. This is pretty cool. Yeah. So I was the head coach at UBC for 12 years, from like 1988 to 2000, and then from there I went to the University of Hawaii, thinking I'd go for 4 or 5 years, but it turned out to be 17. So it was a great experience. But I always knew that I was going to be coming back to Canada. And then when I did, things worked out, and I ended up being an assistant coach at the University of Toronto. So yes, I have coached at those 3 schools. And in my little presentation, I'm going to actually make reference back to them when it comes to Streamline Athletes and how to look up different schools. So anyway, all right. Well, I'm going to.
You're on mute there, Carmyn. I think you press the mute button. Oh. Now you're good. Now you're good.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
Okay.
Here. I was on the key. All right. I don't know how it happened, but anyway, okay. So let's see if this works. All right.
Yes, we're good.
See that? Okay. So let me go to the first slide. And yeah, whoops. Went too far. All right, first slide. So yes, I am the NCAA Athlete Performance Advisor for Athletics Canada. It's a newly created position, and it's designed to build a stronger bonds with the athletes from Canada that are part of the NCAA. In particular, it's the athletes that are part of our CAP program, so the Canadian Athletics Performance Pathway program, as well as those that are on scholarship within the NCAA. So that in itself really narrows things down. And as I said, it's a newly created position. I just started on April the 19th, so I've been doing it for a month now. But yeah, I think because of my background of working with the Canadian national team for 13 years and having been a head coach in the NCAA for 17 years, I've been able to hit the ground with both feet and make some progress. So that's what the job description is, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. So yeah, my primarily responsible for the NCAA athletes who are also on the CAP program. And so mostly it's the current athletes, but as well as some recent graduates. So some of the athletes under my umbrella are seniors now. They've already graduated, and so we're going to help them determine what to do next. And then also looking at future student athletes. But yeah, this program was designed to not just maintain or develop strong bonds with the athletes so that they don't fall through the cracks. But for a large number of athletes that go to the NCAA, they end up moving on to become our future Olympians. And so that's what this is all about, is keeping them going, making sure things go well with them during their collegiate experience, and then help them continue on afterwards so that they can achieve their dreams. But yeah, that's that. So I'll tell you a little bit about those 3 different categories. All right, this current student athletes. As it turns out, the number of athletes that we're talking about right now is 16. All right, 2 of them are on scholarship in the NCAA Division II level, and then the other 14 athletes are at an NCAA Division I school. And of those 14, well, I should say 2, the 2 that are on an NCAA scholarship at the Division II level, they both attend SFU, and actually Heather Henniger is their athlete performance advisor. Then there's the other 14 that are at the Division I level. Glenroy Gilbert, he's actually the athlete performance advisor for Cameron Rogers, and that's because she's ranked in the top 8 in the world. And then Molly Killenbach is an advisor too for a variety of athletes, and it just so happens that 2 of hers are with NCAA schools as well, but they're soon to be graduating, like Lauren Gale, as well as Malik Metier. I don't know if I said his name quite right, but anyway, he's at Texas Tech. So the other 11 are under my umbrella. And I'll get more into that in a bit. What do I do with these 11 athletes? Well, here we go. And the 2 pictures I used happen to be athletes from Ontario. The top one is Aurora Rinder. She actually used to be with the University of Toronto Track Club. And at the bottom of the screen is Abdullahi Hassan, and he was with, or I should not say was with, but is with the Phoenix Track and Field Club. Anyway, so with them and the other 9 athletes, I do regular check-ins. So we communicate at least once every 2 weeks, if not more often. I support their needs. I answer their questions. I advise them of national team information, such as, when to declare and what the selection criteria is, things along those lines, as well as advise them of CAP information and the AAP, which is the National Karting Program. So not all CAP athletes are also AAP athletes, but some of them are. And so I advise them in both of those areas. So basically it's to keep the athletes in the loop so that no one falls through the crack, and that to help them make the jump back to the national team during the summer months and then after when they graduate. So that's my job description, and those are the athletes that I work with, or at least the pictures of 2 of them. Okay, recent graduates. Okay, so they're still under my umbrella, but these are athletes that actually, walked down the aisle recently, got their hats, and have graduated. So, for example, there's 2 of them there. Kyla Butler, she's a hammer thrower, and in that picture, a weight thrower. She was at Bowling Green State University. She just graduated with 2 degrees. She's got her bachelor's as well as her master's degree. And at the bottom of the screen is Ryan Smeaton. He's from Calgary, and he is a 3,000 meter steeplechaser at Oklahoma State who also just graduated. So for the most part, I have the same job description in terms of the check-ins and supporting their needs, answering their questions, and giving them advice. But with athletes in this category, I'm also then helping them to find a best fit when it comes to their daily training environment after they graduate. I mean, do they stay at the same school and continue training on with the alumni? Or do they return to Canada and go back to whether it be their personal coach that they had before, or perhaps work with a different coach closer to the centers, or perhaps even like in Kayla's case, she's looking to come back to Canada and carry on with her training. But my position will be to make sure that she has access to the West Hub, where she can still get sports science and sport med support and stuff like that. In Ryan's case, he's not quite ready to come back to Canada. He's looking to join a professional running group in the United States, kind of like what Brandon's doing. Brandon's in Eugene, and Ryan's checking out his options to see which place is going to be the best fit for him. But both of them definitely have the Olympics, 2024 on their minds, and that's what they're aiming for. So I help them make decisions as far as that goes. And if they don't necessarily want to move to the hubs, hopefully they're if they are in Canada, they can be close to the hubs so that they can receive all those resources. As Brandon said, we've got some great people in Canada, not just coaches, but in the sports science area. And these athletes, because they're on the CAP program, can continue to get that kind of service that's all covered. So that's what I do with them. And then last but not least, or the third category, are the future student athletes. And the young ones aren't really part of the CAP program. I probably should have taken that little label out. But anyway, we're looking at the future ones. All right, so there's some faces of future athletes. that are coming out of high school or will be in the next year or two. And so with these athletes, my job is to, answer their questions. I mean, they're considering different schools to go to. So I'm available to answer questions, but I'm also here to ask them questions. I've got some important questions that they need to consider. I'll share those with you in the next slide. But basically, my role when it comes to working with the future student athletes is to point out the possibilities and let them know what kind of post-secondary schools exist out there, and explain to them the recruiting process, because there are a number of steps to go through, and then share with them the various resources in terms of recruiting services and stuff like that that could be beneficial when it comes to making their decision. And I'll get to this in a bit too, but when it comes to pointing out the possibilities, did you know that there are over 1,700 schools in North America that athletes can choose from? It's humongous. I can remember when I graduated from Richmond Senior Secondary out in Richmond, BC, and I was trying to decide, should I go to UBC or should I go to SFU? And so that was my big dilemma. But never occurred to me to go out of province, let alone out of the country. But it's important to know what's out there, and then help them find the best fit. And in addition to that, it's my desire to help them save time and save money, because as Brandon mentioned, some of these recruiting services can charge an arm and a leg, and it's not necessary. You don't have to pay the big bucks to get help from some of these services. So I'll get into that a little bit deeper as we move along. But so I'm working with athletes of the three different areas: the current NCAA athletes, the graduating ones, and the potential future ones. All right, so here are the questions that I like to ask the athletes. And the number one is, what do you want to study? Because obviously academics should be the driving decision. If you're going to go to a school for 4 or 5 years, you want to be studying something that you're greatly interested in. And as Brandon said, it's going to help open the door for the future career. So it's really important to find a school that meets what it is that you want to study. So that's important. The next question would be, well, what are your grades like? All right, you've got to make the grade in order to get into these schools, in order to take, whatever it is that you want to study. So being a quality student athlete is what matters. And if you don't make the grade, then you're not going to, it doesn't matter how fast you run, how high you jump or far you throw. If you're not a good student, you're not going to be going to any school of those, 1,700 different options. The next question would be, where would you like to go to school? So this is now relates more to the location. And then, of course, that location needs to match up with the subject matter that you want to study. For example, if you want to study marine biology and become a marine biologist, well, then you're not going to go to a school that's in the Rocky Mountains. You need to go to a school that does well in that particular area. Same thing applies to, say, agriculture. You want to study agriculture? Well, then you're not going to go to some school that's in the middle of a big city. You want to be at a school that's more out in the country that does a good job of, providing that education. So those two things kind of need to match up. As well as the location that you want to factor in, the facilities, the quality coaching, the quality of the program, how successful the team is. Do people come in and they actually improve, or do they come to the program and actually, get injured and the performance level falls off? So there's a lot of things to go into that. And then the next question would be, like, are you aware of the cost of tuition? They vary greatly. I mean, it's definitely more affordable to go to school in Canada than it is to go to school in the United States. Just tuition fees and books alone can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000, and that's per year. And those are in US dollars. So you need to factor that in too. Maybe you never really thought about what the cost of education is, but that's got to be factored in. But on the other hand, do you know the scholarship standards? Because if you've got a high enough performance level that allows you to be rewarded with a high enough scholarship, well, then that will cover those costs. But that's something important to consider too. You might not be at that level of performance, and therefore, if you're not at the level of performance, you don't get the scholarship. It's very unaffordable to go to school within the NCAA. All right, so those would be some of the questions that I would ask. All right, back to the possibilities. Like I said, back in my day, I was considering between going to UBC or SFU. But in reality, there are at least 10 associations within the North America. And some of you might be thinking like, okay, there's U Sports and then there's the NCAA, and it's just those two. But there's way more than that. In fact, the NCAA can be broken down into 3 different divisions: Division 1, 2, and 3. Division 1 is sort of the highest when it comes to performance level, as well as the cost of going to school. Not to say that the other 2 divisions aren't competitive, but Division 1, that's like the top end, that's the high level. Other associations within the USA are like NAIA and all those other ones that are listed there. There's 5 different ones. And that's like the junior colleges, the National Junior College. There's also, I think it's Northwestern Athletic Association. So there's a variety, but again, those are even sort of at a sub level, a little bit lower than NCAA. Not to say that some top athletes have come out of those programs. I can later on, I'll name a few like that have come out of the NAIA, but again, it's academically, it's a little bit lower. And then of course, in Canada, we have our 2 different associations. There's U Sport, but there's also the Canadian College Athletic Association. And they've got a competitive program too. So there you go. 1,700 schools fall into one of those different associations. All right, next slide. All right, the process. What is it that you have to do in order I'm just going to move this here, to be considered, or to consider which school you want to go to. All right, so there we go. So first step that you need to do is create a portfolio for yourself. And that's going to include your academic achievements, the courses you've taken, the grades that you've achieved, things like that, as well as, of course, your athletic performances. And not just your personal best, but perhaps some teams you've been on, provincial teams, national teams, whatever the case may be, or other athletic awards that you've achieved. You want to tie in your academics as well as your athletic accomplishments, but also tell a story about yourself. What's your background, and what is it you're looking for moving forward? All right, that's going to be required no matter which recruiting source you use, or if you're going to just go out and get into the recruiting process on your own. All right, that's step 1. You need to create a portfolio, and throw in some pictures too. That's always nice. People like it when they see a face, they see you in action, and then the little blurb about yourself as well as your academic and athletic achievements. Okay, so then once you've got that in place, and maybe you want to go get some professional help to make it look good. I mean, that's cool too, but create that portfolio. It's more about the quality of the content than it is the presentation. But if you get both, that's just even more bonus. Okay, then what you want to do is explore your options. All right, and I just said there's like over 1,700 schools to consider. So you need to, narrow things down. Are you looking to stay in province? Are you looking to stay in Canada? Are you looking to go elsewhere? You need to, search it out, see what kind of programs exist, and try to narrow it down as to what you think is the best fit. Now, that process in itself can be super duper time consuming. And so having said that, it might be a good idea to consider using a recruiting resource. And that company, that resource can help you narrow down the options. And I'll talk a little bit more about them in a bit. But you, not to say that you can't do the whole thing on your own. I mean, if you already know that you want to go to one of these 3 schools, here's my portfolio. I'm going to reach out to the coach. I'm going to let them know, who I am and what I do, then that's great. You don't have to use a recruiting resource. But if you're really undecided and you want to check things out, it's probably a good idea. Now, if one or more of your schools that you're considering is either in the NCAA Division 1 or Division 2 level, then there's an added step and you need to register with the Ncaa Eligibility Center. And what that center will do is going to make sure that you've taken all the required core courses from 9th grade to grade 12, as well as, check your grades to see, are you a quality student? Can you even get into some of these schools? because if you don't have the right core courses and you don't have the high enough grades, then you're not going to get in. But another thing that they verify is your amateurism. All right, have you accepted any prize money at any of the events that you've gone to or competed in? Or have you been like the spokesperson for a particular company and you're advertising for them? All right, it's really important that you, and you can go to the center and see all the things that you can and can't do, but you need to be certified as an amateur athlete before going to a Division I or Division II school. And again, this applies to all athletes in all sports at the Division I and II level. So it's not just an athletics thing. It's not just track and field. It's like every sport, from football, volleyball, basketball, you name it. All athletes have to go through this process. Doesn't apply to Division II, there's Division III, but it is a Division I and Division II requirement. The next step is then to engage with the collegiate coaches. Once you've narrowed down your schools, which you think you might want to go to, you need to establish some communication with them. And it might start with an email, it might lead to a Zoom meeting, and then it might lead to an actual in-person visit. And I strongly agree with what Brandon said in terms of having a parent or a guardian, involved in this process to help you make the right choices. But at the same time, when it comes to the engagement with a collegiate coach, you have to speak up for yourself. All right.Wearing my head coach hat from the University of Hawaii, if I brought an athlete out for an official visit and their parents came too, I mean, that's really cool. I was always in favor of that. But if the whole visit, the parents are doing all the talking and the athlete's sitting there not saying anything, that's a little bit of a red flag. All right. Yes, you want your parents to be involved, but at the same time, a coach wants to see you speak up and wants to know what you think and what your goals are. So it's important to for you yourself to interact with the coaches and not just rely on your parents to do it all for you. That's really important, and that's a part of growing up, right? And doing that kind of stuff for yourself. So. And then the next thing is, it's one thing to communicate by email or by telephone or by Zoom, but at some point you want to be able to actually go to the school and check it out for yourself, see it firsthand. What are the facilities like? Talk to some of the professors. All right. That's an important thing, depending on your, what program it is that you want to study. Talk to the coaches, meet the trainers, and of course, meet the other athletes on the team. And get some feedback from them too. So it's really important to actually be there in person before you make your decision. And if you are interested in going to an NCAA Division I school, you are only allowed to go on 5 official visits, but you can go on unlimited unofficial visits. Now you're probably thinking, well, what's the difference between the two? And what you want is to go on official visits, because then that means the school is paying for everything. They're paying for your flight, they're paying for your hotel, they're paying for your meals. They cover all the expenses that are involved. All right. And that's why you can only go on 5 of them. Otherwise, athletes would be going on, 20 of them. So they limit it to 5. So you got to pick your top 5 schools. But if you want to see more schools, you can still go to other ones, but then you have to pay for your own travel, accommodation, and meals, but you can still go to those schools and meet the same people and ask the same questions and all that sort of stuff. But that's an important thing to know too. So anyway, that's the process. Those are the things you need to consider when you're making your decisions. All right. Oh, so now we're going to get into the actual resources. I just have to slide this over here so it's out of my way. And here's 4 examples of different recruiting resources that are out there. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about them, but I am, because I'm not endorsing anything. I'm not, going to say anything bad about anything, but I am going to give you some information based on my experience and my experience of having been a head coach at an NCAA Division I school. There are some resources, as Brandon said, that are really expensive. I mean, some of these companies charge up to $5,000, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well, I'll help you find which school that would be a best fit." And all of these particular ones aren't just athletics. They recruit for all sports. So they're kind of spread out thin that way. I mean, I'm sure they have huge staffs and stuff, but it's just important to know that they're not athletic specific. So it's not track and field and cross country. They deal with all sports, all athletes, and they charge an exorbitant a lot of money. The amounts vary. But what I've seen from my end when I was at the University of Hawaii, again, I won't name companies, but I mean, I would get something faxed to me, and it would have the athlete's name, a little bit of history, some information about their academics and their athletics. Well, guess what? That same information you as an athlete can create in your profile. And so, you know, if you just sent that profile, it wouldn't cost you anything, and the coach would get the exact same information. So by you sending your profile to this company, they charge a large amount of money. They then send your profile to the schools. You know, it's the same thing. So, you know, it might be wise to, you know, check everything out first before you agree to a particular company. I mean, they're, sure, they want to help you, but what they really want to do is make money. So keep that in mind. They're not really athlete centered. However, there is another resource, and that's the one that Brandon talked about. And that's the one called Streamline Athletes. And I want to make it clear, I have nothing to do with the company. I'm not a spokesperson for the company. I'm not an employee of the company, and I'm not getting any royalties by encouraging athletes to use the resource. I'm just talking about it because I've explored it, I've checked it out, and I can see what the advantages are of this company versus, you know, one of those other 4 companies. So I'm speaking to you based on my knowledge and experience. It has nothing to do with, you know, me being an employee of them. So what are the advantages of Streamline Athletes? Well, oops, went too far. Well, besides the fact that they are a Canadian company, which is kind of cool, but they have a really unique revenue model. And that is, they don't charge the athletes large fees to use their sources. What they do is they charge companies or the schools. I mean, especially the NCAA schools, they've got a large recruiting budget. And if they want help from the recruiting side of things, you know, they pay money, you know, larger amounts of money to access the information. So it's kind of, the Streamline Athletes has flipped upside down, whoops, the revenue model. The other cool thing about this company is that, yeah, they are sports specific. They only deal with athletes that are interested in track and field and cross country. Other sports would have to use, you know, one of the other sources. The other really cool thing about it is the objective data that they provide. They're not trying to sway anyone to go to this school because my buddy's a coach over at this school and he's looking for some athletes, so I'm going to recommend you go there. I mean, it's very transparent, and there's no biases. You just look at the data and you make your own decisions, but they provide all the information. And I'll show with you some examples of what kind of data that they do share. And then last but not least, there's free app options for athletes. In fact, when I was speaking to Brett Montrose last week with Streamline Athletics, he informed me that 95% of the users are using the services for free. So it's great. It's sports specific, it's free, and you get access to all this incredible data. All right, so where do we go? Well, let's go to their website. This is what it looks like. Yeah, so there you go. You can type in streamlineathletics.com that Brendan shared earlier in the chat, and you'll get to this site. All right, then what you can do is you click on to the button up there where it says, like, you know, for athletes, and you get to this page. And again, you can see the word create your free account. All right, that's key. Although I said I have no ties to Streamline Athletes, I was looking at this picture really closely the other day, and I noticed that I'm in it. If you look over there in the lower right, back when I didn't have gray hair, I was still coloring it, so there's a little bit of brown to it. But yeah, there I am watching high jump, and I'm pretty sure that was at the Youth Sport Championships in Windsor back in 2018. But anyway, that's my only tie to the company. All right, they randomly happen to get me in a photo. All right, what are the steps? All right. Well, as I already said, what you want to do is create your portfolio or your own profile. So you go to the site and you create that. Again, it's free. Then with that, you can browse and filter universities from all over North America, all 1,700 of them if you want. And then you can narrow it down to the schools that you're most interested in. So the third step is you're building your own list of schools and coaches that you want to contact. And that's it. Now, if you want to be on the free program, all right, there's 3 different programs you could be on. Oops, what happened here? Oh, I'm missing a slide. Okay, I don't know what happened to the next slide, but that's okay. Well, what I'm going to say here is that, yeah, for free, you can have contact with 2 different schools and talk to the coaches. And, but if you wanted to talk with like 7 different schools at one time, it costs like $8 a month. And then there's a $12 fee per month if you want to be in communication with 9 different schools. And the thing is, you're not limited to that number. Like you start with that number. Let's say you're on the free program and you're talking to 2 schools and then you don't like either of them. Well, then you can talk to 2 other ones. All right. So, but you can only talk to 2 at the most at one particular time. And then, like I said, more if you're paying the higher fee. But I mean, that kind of a monthly fee, $8 or $12 a month, is far more affordable than having to pay, $5,000 for the service. All right. So here's how it works. So you're going to go to the page where it has all the different associations. So again, these are all the associations across North America, and they're listed there alphabetically from C's all the way down to the U's. All right, so what I'm going to do here, I've got 3 different examples, and I didn't want to show a bias. And then people say, well, why didn't you show this school or that school? So I just decided I'm going to just show the 3 schools that I've worked at, and then no one can say I was, being, well, like I said, a way biased, but they're pretty cool examples. So my first example I'm going to show you is the youth sport. All right, so if you go down there and you click on youth sport, then you're going to come to this page, and you'll see that within the youth sport there are 4 different conferences. All right, so from Canada West on the west to the OUA, the Atlantic one, and the Quebec one, there's your 4 different associations. So from here, I'm going to click on the OUA. All right, and then you'll see that within that conference, there are 15 different schools to choose from. And since this is an Athletics Ontario webinar, I thought it would be appropriate to show you this one, but you probably know of all of those different schools. But there are 15 different options to choose from. And you can click on each one, find out more about each school. In this particular case, I'm going to click on the University of Toronto one, since that's where I was coaching last. And you go there, and each page looks similar. There's going to be a picture of the campus, so you get a little idea of what it looks like. And then you're going to get the breakdown, of some of the information. So things that you want to look at, again, we're talking about academics and how important that is. If you look under where it says University of Toronto World Academic Rankings, of all the post-collegiate schools in the world, the University of Toronto is ranked number 19. So that's pretty high up on the academic scale. So that's an important stat to look at. Another one is, well, how big is the campus? How big is the undergraduate population? And there you can see it's over 70,000 students are undergrads. So that's bigger than a lot of towns in Canada. It really is. It's a city to itself. And then below that, you can see what the costs are. So if you're in state or you're just from Canada, it's basically in the cost just a little bit over $8,000 for tuition fees and books on an annual basis. All right, so there you got an idea of that. Now, over on the left side, you can click on the thing that says academic programs, and it'll list all the different programs that this university offers. And then if you scroll down the page, I just took a snapshot of the top of it, but then you'll find out more about the coaching staff. You can scroll down and even look at all the different facilities, from the track itself to the weight room to the indoor track, you name it. They'll show all the various facilities. And then if you dig even deeper, you might have to go off this site and just, do it on your own, but you can find out more about the program in terms of, how the team is done at the youth sport championships. What's the quality of the athletes? What are the top 10 performances per event? Things like that, to get an idea of statistically about how well the team does. All right, so that's an example. All right, now I'm going to go back to the associations, but this time I'm going to click on NAIA. Okay, it's an American one. It's not NCAA division. Well, it's not NCAA, but I'm going to get to that one third. But anyway, let's click on NAIA. What's going on there? All right, they too have a number of U Sport has 4 conferences. The NAI has way more than 4. In fact, I don't know the exact number, but if we scroll down the page, it will list a bunch more. But anyway, within there, let's say I'm going to choose the Cascade Collegiate Conference. All right, what schools go there? Well, there's a bunch of the different schools, and oh, lo and behold, there's the University of British Columbia, the Thunderbirds. So UBC is a part of the NAIA. Now, back in my day, when I was the head coach there, it was part of the U Sport system. In fact, it was one of the Canada West teams. But just before, well, I guess just after I left, they switched from U Sport and decided to go NAIA instead. Not that they thought it was a better program. In fact, I don't. But what it was that it saved the school money. Being way out there on the West Coast, it cost a lot of money to fly the track and field team, to the various schools in the prairie provinces, and then even coming further east when it came to like the U Sport Championships. So anyway, so they switched out. Nowadays, the track and field program is still part of the NAIA, but the cross country has rejoined U Sport. So anyway, just a little bit of background there. So whoops, click on UBC, and then you get this. Same thing. You can see that, academically, it's not quite as high. There's the University of Toronto. It's only ranked 28th in the world. But hey, in the world, being number 28, that's pretty high on the academic scale. And they've got 52,000 people. Okay, it's still pretty big, not quite as big as the University of Toronto, but maybe you're looking for something smaller. And then you see the prices there. So it's about $5,000 to go to school at UBC. And again, over on the left, you can scroll down, look at all the different academic options, scroll further down the page, check out the facilities, the coaching, blah, blah, blah. It's all there. All right. One more time, let's go back to our associations. This time, I'm going to click on Ncaa Division One. And this is stuff that you guys can do for free, all on your own. It's kind of fun exploring. All right. Now, in the Ncaa, there are Division One, 50 different conferences. I mean, that's 50. I mean, there's a lot of schools, a lot of conferences within that particular division. And let's just say I'm going to pick the Big West Conference, only because one of the schools that I coached at was there. So if I go to Big West, I'll see, within Big West, there's 10 different schools that belong to that conference. And one of them is the University of Hawaii. Click onto that. There's a little snapshot picture of the athletic department. And here you can see, all right, let's go back to those world academic rankings. And oh no, they're like 949. So academically, not quite as high up there as those two schools I just used as examples from Canada. However, the undergraduate size is much smaller. There's only 13,000 students there. But then if you look at the cost of going to school, being from Canada, if you chose to go there, it's going to cost over $34,000 US dollars. And if you do the math, it comes out to be about 43,000 Canadian dollars per year to go to school there. So it's important to be able to be on a scholarship that's going to cover those costs. Otherwise, you're going to be paying student loans, forever. All right, and again, you can scroll down and find out more information. But there's, 3 different examples of how you can use Streamline Athletes to check out the different schools. All right. Here's the slide. All right, I thought it was earlier, but there you go. You can do all what I just showed you. You can do that all on your own for free, and you can check out, all the other schools. No charge for that. But then if you want to actually start communicating with the coaches at the various schools, Streamline Athletes will help set that up. And for $8 a month, you can be in communication with 7 different schools. And for 7. And then for $12 a month, they'll help you communicate with 9 different schools at a time. And like I said, if one you don't like, you toss them out and you could throw another school in. So it's kind of cool. And it's very affordable. All right. Now, if you do so choose to go to a school, you've narrowed it down and it's going to be one of those Division One or Division Two schools within the NCAA, then you got to sign up for that Eligibility Center. All right. And what do? That's when they check to make sure you're a valid student, that you've taken all the right core courses between 9th grade and grade 12, and that you've achieved good grades. And so not only do you register with the Eligibility Center, you're going to then send in your transcripts as well as your SAT or ACT test scores. So those are standard academic tests that students are required to do as well. Now, I know there's been a few modifications because of the whole COVID thing. I'm not going to get into that, but what you do is you need to submit both of those. And then at the end, also request your amateurism. So you're going to submit all kinds of paperwork to prove that you're not a professional athlete. So that's what they do. And they verify everything to make sure you've got the grades, you're not a professional, and then boom, you are then allowed to attend one of these schools, be on a scholarship, do the official visits, all that jazz. All right, so what's required academically? You must be a high school graduate. You must meet a minimum GPA in those core courses that they identify. And you also must meet a minimum SAT or ACT test score. And in addition to that, you must meet a minimum combined GPA and SAT, ACT score on a sliding scale. So there's definitely, they verify things academically that you're gonna be able to get into one of these schools. On the amateurism side, like I said, you have to completely and accurately fill out all this sport participation information that's in there, and they need to verify that you haven't been being paid to be an athlete to thereby jeopardize your amateurism status. All right, so that's what they do. And again, it's for all athletes in all sports who want to go to school at either an NCAA Division One or Division Two level. All right, I'm almost done here. I'm really almost done here. Summary. All right, so many Olympians for Athletics Canada have come from the NCAA system, right? There's no doubt about that. However, I want to make it clear that it's not the only pathway for athletes to succeed on the world stage. I mean, it's a pathway, it's been proven to work, but there's been a number of other pathways that have proven to be successful as well. And the U Sport one is a perfect example. I mean, I could name athletes from a variety of different schools that have gone on to be on the Canadian national team that's competed at World Championships or Olympic Games. But I would be here for a long time. But for an example, like Stafford sisters from the University of Toronto, I mean, they're doing extremely well. There's another gal, Michelle Harrison at the University of Saskatchewan. She's gone on and done very, very well. And I mean, the list goes on and on. So it's definitely doable to still achieve high level performance through the U Sport system. Even the Ncaa one, as an example, Liz Gleedle, I think she's been to 3, if not 4 Olympics already, and she throws the javelin. So she's proven that system works too. Or Johnny Gay from the UBC, he's also went through the Ncaa, and he's quite the steeplechaser. So I'm not here to push the NCAA. I am here to be the NCAA advisor, but I do want to point out there's multiple ways of getting to a high level. And the neat thing is with that Streamline Athletes platform, they can help you look at all the various options and find the best pathway that meets your needs, but that best fits your needs and your desires. Because one pathway is not right for everybody, and Streamline Athletes will help you find the one that's best for you. Last but not least, thank you very much for your attention. I know that was a lot of slides to go through, but hopefully it helped answer some questions that you may have had in the back of your mind, or maybe it's even allowed you to think of some new questions that you might have. But feel free to reach out to me anytime. There's my email address with Athletics Canada, and there's also the AC website too, if you didn't already know that. And as I said to Brandon before, I will send this to him as a PDF, and then he can send it to all of you too, so you can always refer back to it and look things over, or like I said, send me an email. Okay.
Carmyn, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I had all these questions written down, and you just answered all of them as we went through the presentation. So that was great. Thank you. But Godfrey did ask one question that I wanted to ask as well. So it was quite timely, but he asked, what is the best time in the student's career to contact schools? And my question was similar. When should an athlete start thinking about this?
Well, according to the Ncaa Eligibility Center, student athletes should start signing up in 9th grade. That's possible. I don't see it as that you have to, but I would definitely use Streamline Athlete platform to start looking at some of those schools, even as early as grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, and do be a free member, so you can check out all the various schools that you think you might be interested in. But then I would say in grade 11, okay, now you got to be a little bit more serious. Hopefully by then you've narrowed things down. And yeah, I would say in grade 11, that's a good time to start reaching out to schools and coaches and finding out, if by chance you might be a good match. But things aren't going to get really heated up until 12th grade and when you start doing official visits and stuff like that. So start out in 9th grade, but get a little bit more serious in 11th grade, and then 12th grade. Yeah, you want to be able to really narrow things down and decide where you want to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I understand there's sort of a season as well for recruiting. So is there a time of the year as well that is kind of ideal to start reaching out to schools?
Well, based on my experience, recruiting was like 365 days of the year. Well, oh yeah, you're always thinking about it, and it's like 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It's like a nonstop thing. So, but there are times in the year, and I guess I could have maybe shared with you the recruiting calendar, but there are definitely times in the year where coaches cannot reach out to athletes, and those would be the dead periods. And that's important to know. Because no contact can be made with athletes during those time periods. And one of them is like around Christmas. You don't want to be getting recruiting calls during the Christmas break. Another in August, from I think August the 1st to the 21st. It could be an evaluation period for coaches, but it can't be a recruiting one. And so, in fact, I was having an interesting chit chat with Simon Nathan just this morning and talking about the World Under-20 Championships. And he was concerned that, maybe we should do a little NCAA webinar for those athletes, because there's going to be a bunch of coaches there that are going to be, jumping on them and basically recruiting them. And I was like, hang on, if that's in August, they can't be doing that. So I verified things then this afternoon, checked out the calendar, and coaches are not allowed to be having any in-person contact with athletes from August the 1st to the 21st. So that's kind of good to know too. I mean, there might be coaches in the stands evaluating athletes, but they can't be making any in-person communication. So I think that's important to the athletes that are going there, that coaches aren't allowed to recruit. But it is in Columbia. I'm sure coaches will be there, but and I don't know if the NCAA police are going to be there to monitor their behavior. There are dead periods, there's quiet periods, and then otherwise, recruiting is all year round.
Haley's got a question, which I'll come to in a second, but whilst we're on the eligibility piece, I'm just thinking, so, if we've got a talented junior who's doing really well at, the competitions here in Canada, and let's say they pick up some prize money, it's obviously not going to be too much. Could that affect their eligibility?
Yes.
So what should they do?
Decline the money.
Okay.
Otherwise, when that report and, did you get any, if you're getting money that's covers like, but it would involve more like receipts and stuff. But if it's like, travel, accommodations, footwear, uniform, stuff like that. I don't want to get, that in itself would be a separate webinar that I think we need to have about the NCAA rules. But accepting prize money for a road race or whatnot, that would definitely be a red flag in terms of, well, hang on here. Now, it's not like the NCAA Eligibility Center is going to say you are ineligible and you can't go to a NCAA Division One or two school. But what they might say is you got to pay that money back. And so that could be one of the consequences in order to get that, removed from your record.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so Haley's asked, slightly off topic, but do you have any advice for current NCAA athletes who want to pursue a professional career? Like, it's a big one.
Okay, so these are graduating NCAA athletes. Is that correct?
I'm picking that up from the message. I'm just reading what she wrote into that. She says yes. Okay,
well, yeah, okay. Well, it's kind of like what earlier on at the beginning of the slideshow when I was talking about how my role is to deal with NCAA athletes that are part of the CAP program, and working with them to find a place to carry on with their training. No, before I answer that question, I should say too, like, even though like some people at the beginning might have thought that, I'm dealing with all these NCAA athletes and it's huge, because there really are hundreds of Canadians that are going to school in the States. But my role is to just work with those that are also on the CAP program. So, because these are the ones kind of targeted to be our future Olympians. Not to say that other athletes can't become Olympians too, but that's sort of where the energy is focused. But since I've got this role and I guess through social media, maybe other means, people have found out that this is my role. I've actually had coaches in the NCAA reach out to me and say, hey, I've got a Canadian on my team, and I think he's pretty good. You want to keep an eye on him. So I've added athletes to my radar list. So even though Athletics Canada says you focus on these 11 athletes, I've actually broadened my circle, and I've added more athletes that I'm also keeping keeping my eye on. And there's several of them that are competing this weekend at the first round of the NCAA Division One championship. So they too are talented. At the end of this weekend, we'll find out how many are going to the finals in Eugene. But although my mandate is to focus on those that are part of the CAP program, on the side, I'm keeping track of other Canadians that are attending NCAA Division One schools that are, highly competitive, that are, almost at the same level, because you never know what might happen in terms of their training. So I would, so back to the question, was help them find a job or just find a place to continue training?
Pursue a professional career was
so like a professional athlete career or professional,
I'm assuming work, but I'm
work?
not sure. Haley, can you
Yeah, maybe more info on that question. I
professional
know that
athlete. There you go.
professional athlete.
Mhm.
Generally, the athletes that are at that level to go on to be professional are also then part of the CAP program. But not to say that there's not exceptions, but if an athlete wanted to stay within the United States, I mean, it's expensive. You don't still have the same support system as you would have if you were attending school. So, and I would say that's generally more for the distance runners and sprinters have decided to do the same thing too. But, you have to look around and see what sort of programs are offered. Some, as we were talking before this webinar began, but there's some coaches, some university coaches will coach some alumni on the side. So it's not part of the university program, but after hours, separately from when the collegiate athletes are training, they might be coaching some professional athletes too. So I guess I would say check, first of all, with the coach that you're working with to see if they do work with professional athletes on the side, or then you need to start, scouting around and seeing what other options are there. Or you can also come back to Canada. And if you're working or if you're living near one of the hubs, and I mean, there's that I wanted to emphasize that there's some great coaches in Canada. I mean, Canada's got some outstanding coaches and some outstanding support services. The downside about Canada is, the weather. We're not, it's not always the best weather year round. So unless you're at a place that's got great facilities, it can be a bit of a challenge. But coming back to Canada, being coached by Canadian coach who cares, and you're near a hub where you can access all the sports science support, that might be an option to consider too. So you got to look around and check too with usually the bigger companies like say the Team Nike or Team Adidas, and I'm not endorsing any of them, but they'll also reach out to athletes and say, hey, we want you to be part of our team. So some of those professional teams are hard to join, but you might be able to still go on and get to that elite level by coming back home.
That's a good sell. I like that. So he's got a question. Hi, Carmyn. Student athletes have to sign renewal scholarship papers each year, correct? Question mark. What should student athletes be aware of around this, or is there any advice around this?
Actually, I'm having to think back. When you're offered a scholarship, it's not meant to be a year by year thing. If you're as a athlete being recruited, if you're offered a scholarship, it's meant to be for the whole time that you're there. And they can't be cutting it back and say, okay, well, you didn't perform well, so we're going to reduce your scholarship. That's an NCAA violation. So those sorts of things cannot happen. So basically, when you sign a scholarship agreement, you're doing it for 4 years, not just year by year. But having said that, if you're on a partial scholarship, for the first year, and maybe the coach wants to bump you up to something more, then you could sign for the next year for a greater amount. But the amount's got to go up. You can't sign for a scholarship and get less. So that's the NCAA rule. You cannot go back on a scholarship. Now, things happen at certain schools, but I'm not going to go there. But those are the rules.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that either. That's yeah, very interesting. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I think we can do a wrap on that. So Carmyn, thank you so very much. That's just incredibly helpful, and coming from a different country, I've certainly learned a lot tonight as well. And hopefully some of the athletes, I know there's a number of athletes on the call that are in that sort of 16 to 17-year-old age range. So I'm sure they're thinking about it. And I really hope this was a very informative session for those athletes and coaches that are in that space.
Yeah, and maybe the next webinar down the road is let's focus on the NCAA rules. What is doable and what's, separating the myths from reality. And I think that would be very informative, and it might be a surprise to a lot of people.
One last question from Godfrey. Excuse me. What are your thoughts on the Ivy League conference?
I haven't researched it a whole lot, but because I do know with their scholarships, it's kind of more of a need based than based on athletic awards. Can you be more specific with your question? I mean, definitely going to an Ivy League school, you're going to get an outstanding education, and they're very competitive too amongst themselves. But getting a scholarship to go to Harvard would be quite a feather in one's hat, especially academically.
My understanding, whilst Godfrey is clarifying that, is that some schools actually don't do sports scholarships. They'll do a general excellence scholarship, and they have to be very, very, very good studious.
Yes, yeah, they have academic scholarships, but then they also have. There's a need quality there too. So depending on what your family's income is, there's some that way. But yeah, it's not based on athletic performance. It's definitely more geared towards academics, but as I recall, there's something based on need in there too. But you got to make the grade first, but then more money if it's needed.
There wasn't any clarification there from Godfrey, so hopefully that was a good answer for you, Godfrey. All right, well,
thanks, Godfrey, for the question. Good to, I haven't seen him for a few years.
We'll wrap it up, and thank you again, Carmyn, for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. If you do have any more webinars that maybe deep dive into anything more specifically, please let us know, and I'll let the group know. Yeah, we'll leave it here for tonight. Next month's session, we have Sasha Gulish and Rachel Jewett. And Rachel is a performance psychologist. So we're going to be talking about some things around mental health issues, as well as performance psychology for athletes. So I think it's going to be an awesome session, both lovely ladies, and very excited to chat. So I'll be sending out details for that in the coming weeks. And thank you so much again to our speakers, and to everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks for the invite. Bye for now.
Ciao.